make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's get into it.
Nobody ever knew him or saw anybody that ever worked directly for him. You never knew. That was his power. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
Our finding was to discover that a mild electrical current applied to the surface of the brain causes a patient to have a memory from his own past sometimes, one specific recollection of an experience.
There's times when you see a demon-possessed person that is literally jolting around, can't control their senses, screaming, slamming on their face, doing things that are just completely something that you would never do to yourself unless you really just wanted to hurt yourself in a bad way. And now I think this kind of explains the idea that, there may be an entity who walked in them that's having trouble controlling the car. He's having trouble driving, sending electricity to these parts and that parts. And this is when this manifestation takes place.
Here's Shabby.
What the hell are you guys doing?
Let's take a deep depth into what is going on here. People can't even analyze before their eyes what is going on. Apparently, this man was a great host for the deity, for the lower ones, for the demons, because as you can see, he is high voltage. He is on high, and this demon doesn't even know how to drive the car, doesn't even know how to act within the host, because this host body, his temple, is just so full of it. He's open. This man did not serve the true and living God, so therefore he is wide open. Yes, the door is open. I mean, this drug made a portal to go to the next realm within this man's temple.
This has led to lots of
Now I gotta bring you here, fast forward a little bit, and then listen to what K-2 is and how it is made and what it is made for, and that it's not even edible for the body. And this is how this coincides with these demons and this open portal. This is more than a gateway drug. This is an open portal to the next dimension, to these foreign entities, aliens, demons. Yes, demons.
bad things, and the search for legal alternatives drove many people to use crazy chemicals and synthetic blends that look like marijuana. But these people had no idea they were actually smoking deadly poisons. This is the mysterious substance known as spice.
All information presented in this video is in an objective, informative, educational, and non-glorified manner and fully complies with all YouTube community guidelines.
What's up, and welcome back to The Strange Show. This is the channel where we learn everything about your favorite plant. From the history and culture of weed, to the science behind its effects, to videos on growing at home. You'll learn everything about cannabis, even synthetic cannabis.
And hold up, y'all, you gotta be good observants. Why does it have an eye on it? Like, you know, the all-seeing eye and or the evil eye. Why does it have an eye on it? The occultic Egyptian eye.
In this video, we're going to be looking at spice. We're going to look at what it is and how it got the name spice, what the chemicals in spice actually are, how this stuff was sold, why it is so dangerous, how it got banned, and then I'm going to show you why, despite what you might think, these things like spice aren't all bad. So let's start with the basics. Spice is a synthetic form of marijuana that is created using a mixture of herbs and some specific man-made chemicals. It was marketed as a legal alternative to marijuana, and it is often marketed as a natural and herbal product. But despite its natural-sounding name and marketing tactics, spice is actually a highly potent and potentially dangerous substance. But why is it called spice? The name Spice is actually a brand name for one of the first and most popular forms of synthetic weed. The brand was originally marketed as a way to get the effects of weed without breaking the law, and it quickly gained popularity among people looking for a legal high. But as the real dangers of spice became more widely known, many countries have made it illegal to possess or sell it. So let's look at the history and the current status of spice to see why this mysterious little blend of stuff has caused so much controversy. The development of synthetic marijuana, also known as spice, can be traced back to the mid-2000s. At this time, there was a growing demand for legal alternatives to weed, and many people were looking for ways to get the effects of weed without breaking the law. One of the key players in the development of spice was a researcher named John W. Huffman, who worked at Clemson University in South Carolina. Huffman was a chemist who...
See, do you get it? Huffman was a chemist. No, and yeah, Huffman was a alchemist. That's what he was. He is a magician. He is a druid.
Who was known for his work on the effects of various chemicals on the brain, and he was interested in studying the effects of marijuana on the human body. In the mid-2000s, Huffman and his team synthesized a number of different chemicals that were similar to the active ingredient in marijuana, THC. These synthetic chemicals were man-made cannabinoids, and they were designed to mimic the effects of THC on the brain. Huffman and his team had no intention of creating a drug like spice when they synthesized these cannabinoids. All they wanted to do was study the effects of these chemicals on the brain, and they hoped that their research could be used to help develop new treatments for a variety of medical conditions. But when Huffman's research started to spread, it wasn't long before these synthetic cannabinoids escaped the lab, and they were being used to create spice and a lot of other forms of synthetic weed. So despite Huffman's intentions for doing good, his work actually ended up doing something very different. Some of the chemicals that are commonly found in spice and other synthetic marijuana products include JWH-018, JWH-073, and HU-210. These chemicals are all synthetic cannabinoids and are not found in natural marijuana at all. They can also be much more potent and dangerous than THC, and when these chemicals escape the lab, that's when things got weird. When spice was first developed in the mid-2000s, it was marketed as a legal alternative to marijuana. The manufacturers of spice and other synthetic marijuana products claimed that their products were natural and herbal, and that they were safe and legal to use. To appeal to consumers, spice was often marketed as a legal high that could provide the same effects as marijuana without breaking the law. And even though it was sold in a variety of forms, including a liquid that could be vaporized and inhaled, what most people are familiar with are the little bags of what were labeled like incense or potpourri. And this stuff looked sort of like some horrible weed. Almost just like some really ugly shake. Like at first glance, it would be easy to be fooled. If you just saw a pile of spice on the table and you just looked over, be like, oh, there's a pile of weed. But when you look closer, it's not actually weed. But that's exactly what the people who were making this stuff wanted. It looked like weed because they wanted you to think of it as weed, or at least as being very similar to weed. The manufacturers of spice and other synthetic marijuana products were careful to avoid making any explicit claims about the effects of their products, but they would often use vague and misleading language to suggest that their products could provide a range of benefits. Like it would say ultimate relaxation or super stress relief or something goofy like that. It wouldn't actually say this relieves stress, but it would say like ultimate stress relief potpourri. And as a result of this marketing, spice became popular among people looking for a legal way to get high. And it quickly gained a following with just people looking for an easy way to get high. Because it was fairly cheap, it was easy to get. This was at a time when cannabis was really illegal, so even if you weren't trying to like pass a drug test for work or whatever, you might still go get some of this stuff because it was just like right there. It was at every gas station, every corner store, it's at the bodega, just go grab you some. And it really did just blow up. This stuff was everywhere for a little while. But despite its popularity, spice was far from safe or legal, and it would not be long before the dangers of this drug started becoming more widely known. Like marijuana, spice is a psychoactive substance that can alter a person's mood, perception, and behavior. However, unlike marijuana, spice is created using synthetic chemicals that are not naturally occurring and can be much more potent and dangerous than THC. The use of spice and other synthetic marijuana products has been linked to severe adverse reactions, including psychosis, hallucinations, seizures, and even death. There have been numerous reports of people dying after smoking spice or experiencing other negative health effects as a result of its use. But because spice is such a relatively new thing that hasn't been researched a lot, the long-term effects of its use are not fully understood, and it's not clear what risk or dangers may be associated with its use over long periods of time. But there are other risks, like overdose. The risk of overdose is increased by the fact that spice is not regulated and its ingredients are not standardized, so no one ever really knew how much of it they were getting in any particular bag, and it wasn't always the same. Like when we're talking about manufacturers of spice, you might be thinking of companies, you might be thinking of an assembly line and like quality control standards and things like that, but this was usually just like some dude whipping up stuff in the kitchen at his house. He would put it in some little bags with stickers he made himself, heat seal the top, and go sell it to the man at the bodega. So there was like no oversight anywhere from anyone. This was just people whipping up whatever they wanted. So you never knew how much of the actual chemicals you were getting in your mix. And you never really knew what the mix was even made out of. It could be marshmallow leaf or sage or hamster bedding. Who knows what this stuff actually was in these little bags. These risks, combined with the fact that spice is often marketed as a legal and safe alternative to marijuana, led many countries to take action and make it illegal to possess or sell. In the United States, spice was first made illegal in 2010 when it was classified as a Schedule I controlled substance, which is the classification that is reserved for things that are considered to have a high potential for abuse and no accepted medical use. But despite all the bad press these synthetic cannabinoids get, all these chemicals like JWH018 and HU210, these aren't necessarily a bad thing. Just because they were used in a bad way back then doesn't mean that they're necessarily a bad thing. One of the main scientific purposes of synthesizing cannabinoids is to study the effects of these compounds on the body and potentially develop new medications. By synthesizing cannabinoid compounds in the lab, researchers can study their effects on the body in a controlled and systematic way, which can help to better understand how these compounds work and how they might be used to treat certain medical conditions. Synthetic cannabinoids have been studied for their potential use in the treatment of pain, nausea, and other medical conditions. And some synthetic cannabinoids have also been explored as potential treatments for addiction and other disorders. But these things were never meant to be sprayed onto lawn clippings and then smoked by people. Not at all. These were actually made for important research on what cannabis could potentially do. John W. Huffman, the guy who created these chemicals, once said that he couldn't imagine why anyone would try it recreationally. Because of its deadly toxicity, he likened it to playing Russian roulette and said that those who tried it must be idiots. One professor of pharmacology and toxicology said, its potency can be up to 100 or more times greater than THC. That's how much of the drug it takes to produce an effect. These things are clearly very different from THC, and thus not surprising that their use may result in the development of life-threatening adverse effects. And all of these people that got injured and all of these people that died from this stuff, this is really just a big failure of the war on drugs. The only reason that these synthetic things were ever able to become so popular was because that real weed was illegal in the first place. In a lot of cases, the people that were using this stuff were just looking for a legal high, something that you couldn't go to jail for and something that you wouldn't lose your job over. If you had to take UAs for work and then you're using this spice, you're good. But if you're smoking real weed, you're fired. And if you get stopped with some of the spice in your car, you were good. But if you got stopped with some real weed, you're in jail. And stuff like this is actually still happening. This reminds me of how veterans in Texas right now are all turning to Delta 8 products because the medical program in Texas is just so bad. They're like, it's easier for me to get relief from Delta 8 than it is to go to the medical program. And Delta 8 isn't synthetic, it's not the same as spice, not at all, but it's sort of like the same comparison. People are just settling for whatever's there because what they really want is so hard to get. Why do we still have a war on drugs? Why are we still fighting weed so hard? Especially for veterans, especially when half the country already has legal weed programs. It doesn't make any sense to me. And even if you go back one step further, these things were only created as a way to do easy research on the effects of marijuana. The only reason they made the synthetic compounds is because the real compounds from the real plant were so hard to study. For so long, it's been almost impossible to study anything having to do with marijuana in the US. But now we have a bill that could change all of that. This new bill that just passed is going to allow a lot of new things for cannabis that might completely change the game and everything we've ever thought about this plant. If you want to learn more about that, just click this video and I'll see you there. Thanks for watching. Peace.
Support me because I support Jesus, and